Welcome to Radical Personal Finance. My name is Joshua Sheets. I am your host, and today I want to share with you about the brand new business that I have started. And you have been very much a part of this process, and I hope you will be part of the process in the future. So I want to share with you the background, and then I'm going to make you guys an offer that I think you're really going to love, and at least I hope you do. And I'm excited to make you that offer to tell you how you could participate in the brand new business. This is part of the Joshua's Changed Everything in His Life series. And the first episode I shared with you how I've changed my philosophy. I've tried to discard a whole bunch of philosophies that may have served me well in the past, but I've decided are not serving me well now. And I've instituted some new ones. Then I shared with you in episode 1115, how I bought a business. I told you about buying Life of Fred, the math book publishing company that I've admired for so long, story-based math curriculum to take people from kindergarten through an undergraduate degree in mathematics through story, where every single math concept that you learn is needed to solve a problem in the protagonist's life. And I've admired it for many years. And I shared with you how Radical Personal Finance was a part of finding that story. By the way, thank you for those of you who have written in. I've gotten lots of great emails. Joshua at radicalpersonalfinance.com. If you ever want to get in touch with me, I've got great emails. Several of you did what I did over the years, and you wrote in and you just bought the whole series of books, which from the very beginning to the end, which is amazing. Thank you for that. That has been a great blessing. And a bunch of you have purchased the Financial Choices book, which is great. So I've been sending all those out, and I've got a team that does the shipping for me, but I still do it. And so I've been sending you guys all your books, and it's been amazing. So please keep those coming in. If you're looking for a gift for someone, basically high school and up, middle schooler can do it, but high school and up, high school or college student, you want to give them a fun and interesting and really good financial book for Christmas, you can order at lifeoffred.com. Which, by the way, one of the things I've not done well in the past, I've not been a good promoter of my stuff. And Joshua's turned over a new leaf. Everything is changing. And that means that I am going to promote to you my stuff. I'm going to do it consistently. I'm going to do it confidently. I'm going to do it all the time. That's my resolution, is to be a brand new man and to promote my stuff and believe in my own stuff enough to promote it consistently and heavily. So Life of Fred, that's what I shared with you. Today, I want to tell you about the brand new app that I have developed that I believe is going to solve the problem of teaching children languages. And you know that I've shared the story with you along the way of how I've developed these things. Basically, what I've done is I've tried to take everything that I have learned from teaching my children now 7 languages and counting in the last 5 years and make it easy for you. And this was not possible a couple years ago. I'm right on the cutting edge of the technology. This was not possible, but now it is. And I think we've got a good start and we're going to make it great. So I want to tell you all about it. Let's wind the clock back. And for those of you who've been around, forgive the repetition. If you're a new listener, you can find all this in the annals of Radical Personal Finance. But let's wind the clock back to about the year, I'll get it very precise, 2020. So in the year 2020, I and my family, we had been living in Costa Rica for over a year, and we had made zero progress learning Spanish. Now, for context, my wife and I spoke some Spanish from an earlier time. We both learned in high school and we spoke some Spanish. But my children did not speak Spanish. And I somewhat accidentally wound up living in a Spanish-speaking country and not engaging at all in the Spanish language. If you had told the 20-year Joshua that would happen, the 20-year-old Joshua would have laughed in your face, because that's ridiculous. Why would I live in a place and not use the local language? But it happened to me. I wound up living in Costa Rica, and I wound up in an accidental expat bubble. I went to an English-speaking church, not because I didn't want to go to a Spanish-speaking church, but because I liked the people at the English-speaking church, and it worked out well for us. We wound up in an English-speaking homeschool co-op. We wound up in an English-speaking community all around, and here we are living in a Spanish-speaking country, and my children, after being there for more than a year, hadn't learned a word of Spanish. I didn't know what to do because that was embarrassing to me, but I didn't know what to do. So, of course, I could have enrolled the children in school, but I thought that just doesn't seem like a good move for us right now. So I didn't do that, which would have helped them, of course, to learn the language. So then if you're not going to put your children in school and you're not going to hire a language teacher, then what are you going to do? Well, it fell on me. I got to figure out a solution. So that's all right. If it's to be, it's up to me. So I'll solve it. So the first thing I did was I bought a Living Languages CD collection. And I said, this is going to be great. So I started playing these language learning CDs in the car for the children and the sentence approach and playing for them. Well, that went over about like a lead balloon, right? It did not work at all. They didn't like it. Nobody listened. Nobody learned. Nothing worked. So I thought, man, what do I do? So I decided to make up my own thing. So the first thing that I did was I said, well, I read to the children a lot. What if I just did some reading in Spanish and maybe I'll just translate it? So I always have had the habit of, I'm a big believer in reading aloud to children. So I've always just read to the children. So I looked around and we had liked the Little Jewel books from, I think it's Rod and Staff. And I knew they had some in Spanish. So I bought all of the Spanish books from Rod and Staff, the Mennonite publisher that they had. And they had some cool bilingual ones. They had the words in Spanish and the words in English, and they had various versions of them. So I bought them all out, all the ones that they had, and I started reading those stories to my children at the breakfast table. And I would read in Spanish, and then I would read in English. So sentence in Spanish, sentence in English. After a while, my confidence grew, and I didn't need the bilingual books anymore. So I just went on and kept on buying all of the Spanish children's books that I could find. And I did this for a series of months over time. Then I thought, well, what else can I do? Well, my eldest was a reader. And by then I was about to doing the bilingual reading aloud. I thought, you know what? I bet he could read in Spanish only if I could find some Spanish books. But I didn't know what books to find. And so I was looking around. And what I was looking for was something like the Hardy Boys. The Hardy Boys was what hooked me on reading when I was a boy. And I thought if I could find something like this, it would work well. And I had a few different things, but none of them really worked. But it was what hooked me on reading. What to find some Spanish books. But I didn't know what books to find. And so I was looking around. But I just started buying books. And most of them didn't go over well. But then I bought this little cartoon Bible, which was designed for kids, and it was in Spanish. And I gave that to my eldest, and he was about 8 at the time. 7 or 8, and he just engaged with it. He just loved the cartoons. He read it and he read it and he read it and he read it. I thought, man, this is great. So, all right, we had the cartoon book, but what else could I find? And I was looking for something like the Hardy Boys. And when I was a boy, what turned me on to reading was the Hardy Boys adventure novels. Now, this has not been the case with any of my children. I bought the whole set and I thought, oh, I'll pass this thing along that I loved when I was a boy, and they're all just kind of ho-hum about it. But I was looking for it. I couldn't find any Hardy Boys. I ordered 3 from Argentina, but they were taking forever to come in. So I was at the bookstore looking around, and I found this old series of books from Enid Blyton called, I think they were published in English as the Five, or like the Fabulous Five or the Famous Five, something like that. In Spanish, they're Los Cinco. And so I grabbed one of those and I took it home and I started reading it. I read the first chapter aloud one Saturday afternoon to my eldest 2 children, and then I just kind of left it there. I seated the coffee table with the books, as is our wont, and I left it there on the books and see what happened. And sure enough, he picked it up and he just started reading. And then I knew, boom, this kid's hooked. So I kept on buying those series, and I was about 10 books deep into the Los Cinco series, and all of a sudden, I forget the context at this point, but all of a sudden, one time, the kid was speaking Spanish. And I thought, what? And I listened to him speak Spanish. I think it was with our housekeeper at the time. Listened to him speak Spanish. And he was using what, for those of us who learn languages in the institutional way, is a difficult thing. He was using the subjunctive tense in Spanish, and he was using it naturally. Now, I could never use it naturally. I have to think whenever I'm supposed to use the subjuntivo, right? And you say que lo mantenga, right? And so, but it just kind of popped out of his mouth, and I thought, man, this is great. So then I went on and I hired a babysitter, Spanish speaking babysitter, and all she did was just come to the house and play with the children for a couple hours a day. And after that, like 3 or 4 weeks of that, I thought, man, this kid is fluent in Spanish. This is great. And I thought, man, that wasn't very painful. That was like 7 or 8 months. And here he is. He's reading all the time. He's reading in Spanish. And this like fairly fluent Spanish and fairly correct Spanish is just popping out of his mouth. And man, that was easy. So along the way, I got super interested in this topic as I started researching it. And I thought, that's where I came across the ideas of second language acquisition and all the debates and everything about the comprehensible input hypothesis by Stephen Krashen. I found a whole language community, and that got me super motivated. And I thought, man, could I do this myself? So I did an experiment for myself along the way, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to see if we can do this with French. So this time I did it with the children. And I spoke Spanish, but I decided I'm going to spend 3 months just reading French. And I set a goal of reading 1 million words in French. And I started with, I used the Link app, which is just an amazing app. And so I started with the Link app. I read some of their intro beginning stories. And then I switched to Jules Verne, Around the World in 80 Days, which was the first French book that I ever read. And then I started reading the Jason Bourne series by Robert Ludlum, which I was able to find in French with the French ebook and then the French audiobook. And so I read all 3 books in the series, and with reading with my eyes while listening to the French narrator speak the words so I could listen to them. And I then decided I got super interested in the in what's called the activation hypothesis. And there's this guy, what's his name? He's polyglot Huliganon or something like that. He's the guy who created the gold list method. And he talked about the idea that, you know what, your brain will activate languages when you've had enough comprehensible input. So you have input, and then when it's in a situation where it needs the language, then it can turn it on. So I did this 3 months of reading. I read 1 million words, a little over 10,000 words a day, about an hour and 20 minutes a day. And then I hired a French language teacher and to spend the weekend with me. And then I took a French test. And so the test that I took was the Canadian, was it the test de connaissance, the Canadian French language exam for Canadian immigration. I had put in an application for a Canadian residence permit for me and my family. And so I had to go do it in Nicaragua. I went to Nicaragua for the weekend. I spent the weekend with this French teacher. And on Friday night, it was brutal. I was trying to speak French and like only Spanish would come out. And on Saturday, a couple hours on Friday night. Saturday, we spent about 5 or 6 hours together. Everything got a lot better. And then by Sunday, we spent about 4 hours together on Sunday. And I was able to chat with this guy just like normal people. And of course, my French is terrible. It was full of constant, never-ending errors and problems. But I could understand everything that he said, and I could communicate and get my point across to him as rough and as inadequate as unbeautiful as it was. And so then I went on Monday morning and I took the Canadian French exam. And when I got my score back for the Canadian French exam, they scored me as a C1 on the Common European Framework for Languages, as a C1 of my reading comprehension, as a B2 on my oral comprehension skills, as a B2 on my verbal expression skills, and as a B1 on my written expression skills, on my writing ability. And I thought, wow, that was cool. Now, I didn't get all my points for the Canadian Immigration Program because I still have that stupid B1 with the writing ability, but I thought that was really cool. That was fun. I enjoyed that. And then somewhere along the way, the timeline is a little hazy now, but I started doing the same thing with the children. So I thought, man, I did that in Spanish. I wonder if we could do it in French. So I did the same thing. I started getting stories and reading them to the children in French. I used the Link app for all the reading there because I had since become a master user of Link, and that solved all my problems. So I would read to them with a bit of the translation. Yeah. And anyway, more children's books. And then I said, can we do this again? So I kept buying books, bought books. And then, long story short, it worked, is I did it again. And we went to France in 2021, and the children, I bought, sorry for the timeline. It's been a year since I told these stories. We went to France in 2021. I had done some of the stuff of reading to them, but one of the reasons I went to France was to buy books. So I bought so the children were not fluent at that point in time, but I bought a couple of books in France because I was finally able to see what there was. And I bought about 2 suitcases full of books. I brought them home, and we moved to Florida after that. And I went through and I just started having them read the books while listening to the books, using the same process that I had been using, and reading and listening at the same time. And then, lo and behold, a few months later, after something like 6 or 7 months, then it worked. And my eldest, who was 9 or 10 at the time, was really fluent in French. I thought, wow, that was cool. So the problem was that then I ran out of languages that I spoke. And I thought, could we do the same thing in another language? So I kept on working. And by this time, now it's clear to me, by this time I had become a master user of LingQ. And so I said, well, maybe I can use modern translation tools to do this. So I decided that German was the next obvious language for us to learn. So I started creating German language materials. I created a whole bunch of materials I took all of the LingQ stories and I translated them. In fact, if you'll hang on one second, let me hit pause, just a moment. All right, I found it. So this file I made on May 10, 2022 at 8:04 a.m. Here, check this out. This is what I did. German mini stories, story 1 with English translation.
Ich erzähle euch jetzt eine kurze Geschichte über Markus.
I'm going to tell you a short story about Marcus.
Markus steht jeden Tag 6 Uhr auf.
Marcus gets up every day at 6 o'clock.
Er macht Frühstück und trinkt einen Kaffee.
These are all the LingQ mini stories. He makes breakfast and drinks a coffee.
Er fährt mit dem Auto zur Arbeit.
He drives his car to work.
Seine Arbeit beginnt 7:30 Uhr.
His work begins at 7:30. You get the idea. So I made these stories, and these LingQ mini stories are amazing because they're super repetitive. The story takes about 40 seconds or so to tell. It's told twice, and then you answer a bunch of questions about the stories. So I made all those, and we started listening to those at the breakfast table every day. I made those recordings, and then while I cooked, I would put the thing on for the children. I also made other short stories. Here, let's do Henry Hühnchen. So I made this one. I found this online, and I found this online, and then I translated it. I used Google Translate, and I just figured out where to put the time versions in, and I made this story right here.
Henry Hühnchen. A version of the tale by the German Projekt.com. Lasst mich euch die Geschichte von Henry Hühnchen erzählen.
Let me tell you the story of Henry Chicken.
Henry Hühnchen lebt in einem ganz normalen kleinen Hühnerhaus in einem ganz normalen Dorf.
Henry Chicken lives in a normal little chicken house in a normal village.
Er ist weder groß noch klein.
He is neither tall nor short.
Er ist weder dick noch dünn.
He is neither fat nor thin.
Er ist weder schlau noch dumm.
He is neither smart nor dumb.
Henry Hühnchen ist ein ganz normales Huhn.
Henry is a completely normal chicken. So I made those stories. I made Herr Vogel and Frau Wall. I made a bunch of those. Then I started to go on further with the first word books. So I got I'll play. This is the first 1,000 words. I forget the publisher of this, but I made these audio files that I played for the children every day. So I'm sorry. I've got so many audio apps on my computer that someone could teach me on a Mac how to just make it use QuickTime instead of stupid Apple. That would be really amazing. Then I'll be a much better broadcaster. Here we go. So this is what...
Der Bauernhof.
Farm.
Der Bauernhof.
Farm.
Der Bauernhof.
Farm.
Der Heuhaufen.
Haystack.
Der Heuhaufen.
Haystack.
Der Heuhaufen.
haystack,
Der Schäferhund.
sheepdog,
Der Schäferhund.
sheepdog,
Der Schäferhund.
sheepdog. So that was one of the early ones. And then when I made some of the other ones, I switched it so it wasn't quite so repetitive. So those files, this was July of 2022, sound like this.
Die Farben.
Colors,
Die Farben. Die Farben. Braun.
brown,
Braun. Braun. Weiß.
white,
Weiß. Weiß. Schwarz.
black.
Schwarz.
So I put together this and I made a bunch of stories, and then I used all of the audio, all of the things from Ion Press and all of their short stories, so German through pictures, and I used all their audio. I didn't translate that audio because it was all just comprehensible input with graded readers, but I put together this giant German. Then I started learning how to make interlinear books, and so I figured out how to make interlinear books. I would take the text. I found an interlinear book tool online, and I used Google Translate, and I made several interlinear books, printed them all out, and I had the children read them. So the point of all this is that I successfully taught my children a language using my techniques of a language that I didn't speak using just translation software. And it worked really well. I don't speak German. I understand it a little bit, probably about an A2 level of German ability, but I was able to do this all using translation tools. And I was able to, after probably 6 or 8 months, I don't recall, of doing this, doing about an hour a day. And what I learned to do with my students is I would do 3 to 4 different language activities, about 15 to 20 minutes each, aiming for about an hour a day total, but very mixed up, different approaches. So anything I could find would be great, but I could only do it for 10 or 15 minutes. Otherwise, they would lose attention. And so I made progress with this. And so after 6 or 8 months of it with my eldest, who was ahead, my second child was doing French at the time, my younger children was Spanish, my eldest, who's been my pioneer for all this stuff, I was able to recruit a German-speaking friend of some German friends of ours, and I had their teenage son come and stay with us for a week, and those were his first German conversations. And I took a video of them playing chess together, and that was his first German conversation, was about chess. And that basically, once again, he was able to skip all of the pain that I had with learning things, with all the boring stuff, and just jump straight to the actual, like, using the language, not learning the language. Same thing I did with French, where I was able to go to Nicaragua and hire the French teacher. And after a few hours, I was able to use the language, not practice the language. We were just communicating. I thought, man, that was great. So, all right, we did Spanish, French, German. What's next? Well, German is a case inflected language. So I thought, let's go ahead and do Latin. And I've always been super skeptical of the classical, like, fixation on Latin. I've always been a skeptic, but I thought, well, let's go ahead and do Latin. So we did Latin, and the good thing with Latin is that there's a great pathway already done with the graded readers, especially. Man, it's been so long. I'm blanking on the name of it. The Lingua Latina per se illustrata. So the I forgot his name. The guy who wrote the book, that is kind of the comprehensible input approach. And so I just bought all the Latin stuff, and I started working it through, and I bought all the Latin books, and I kind of marched through the same thing. I was able to use Luke Ranieri's audio, and I matched it up to the Latin. And because my son already had English and Spanish and French, it's fairly straightforward to learn Latin after you learn Spanish and French. I bought all the Cambridge Latin books. I bought all the Latin graded readers. I've got dozens and dozens of these things. And once again, over the course of time, we just kind of did this through. And I developed a whole system with this that worked really well, to the point where my eldest, a couple of years ago, he read the Hobitus Ille, right? The Hobbit in Latin, the Latin translation of the Hobbit. And I don't have any idea how much he understood. He seemed to enjoy the story. I'm guessing he understood 80% of it. But basically, you just have this huge quantity of input in Latin, and this would be great. So I said, well, what can I do next? And so I said, well, let's go ahead and do Greek. And so at this point in time, I was trying to be a little bit ahead and work this out before my children were coming along. So I tried to put together a Greek curriculum. I failed with that until I found Biblingo. For any of you who are interested in learning ancient Greek, you've got to use Biblingo. Biblingo is amazing for learning ancient Greek or biblical Hebrew. Biblingo is where it's at. It's outstanding because it allows a student to go through with nothing and learn the whole thing. So finally, I started with some of Luke Ranieri's Greek in Action stuff. That didn't at the breakfast table. It kind of worked okay, but it just wasn't building. So when I found Biblingo, then that changed everything. And so I have my children. It's not just my eldest. The others are all on the same pathway. But I have my children go through Biblingo. Then after Biblingo, then I started on the Ranieri, not Dowling, that's his other one. Yeah, the Ranieri Dowling Greek reading. So I bought all the Greek graded readers and he's working through all the graded readers in Greek and just kind of step by step using I think it's called the Ranieri Roberts approach, using Luke Ranieri's stuff that he's built there. So then I thought, wow, Greek has gone really well. Like we can sort of kind of work our way through. What else could we do? So a year and a half ago, I started with Chinese and everything failed with Chinese. And the reason everything failed with Chinese was I was stuck with this problem of I can't fake my way through the Chinese. I can fake my way through the German. I did no problem with that. I still read to the children in German, and I just use translation. I do that, even though my pronunciation is very poor, but I fake my way through. I can fake my way through Latin. That's no problem. I can fake my way through Greek. I can't fake my way through Chinese. Stupid characters. I can't read them. And then even if I do read them, they can't understand me because I don't actually speak Chinese. So I've got to rely entirely on stuff. So I thought, okay, well, let's do all the apps. So I would experiment with a bunch of the apps. So I started using the apps. We did Hello Chinese and Do Chinese, and I subscribed to all of them, and I tried to build the same kind of thing. And it worked, sort of. My eldest is a slow Chinese student. He has some knowledge, and I bought up several character books and kind of working it through. But everything went slower, and it went slower because Chinese is much more different from English than is Latin or Greek, but it also went slower because I couldn't use the books. And I could find graded readers, but there were no graded readers with English. Now, there's this big debate in the language learning space about, like, should you translate? And we should just do all Japanese all the time, and translation is bad because then you're using your mind instead of intuiting the language. And I think it's all whatever. I don't want to be opinionated. Do what works for you. I don't care. But for me, the translation is a giant help because with translation, you can make anything comprehensible. Because here's the problem with comprehensible input. It's boring. If you make something comprehensible and it's all in the target language only, it's crazy boring. And so you don't want to do the stuff, and you don't get enough time in the language. You don't get enough reps. Whereas if you just use translation, you can make it really interesting. So along the way, as I was working my way through this process, I thought, I've got to be able to do it. So first I said, well, I'm going to make a Spanish curriculum. So I started with my family. I made Uncle Joshua's Spanish language school. And I thought, I can do this. So I started with making the mini stories, and then I started doing some actual stories. So I hired a friend of mine who was a Spanish speaker, and we made stuff like this. Play. There we go.
Capítulo 3. Un perro travieso.
Chapter 3. A mischievous dog.
Pete y Ricky quedaron pasmados al oír que se les ofrecía tanto dinero por aquella llave.
Pete and Ricky were stunned to hear that he offered them so much money for that key.
$50, repitió el cerrajero.
$50, repeated the locksmith.
Esa es la moneda que se usa en América.
That's the money that they use in America.
¿Y por qué vale tanto esa llave?, preguntó el mayor de los hermanos.
And why is it worth so much, that key? Asked the older of the two brothers.
El propietario de la llave,
the owner of the key,
fue a mi tienda a preguntar por la llave.
Went to my store to ask about the key.
Y ofrece ese dinero como recompensa.
And he offers that money as a reward.
A quien haya encontrado la llave.
To whomever has found the key. Sorry, I got interested in the story. I hope you did too. So That's actually the point, right? So those were files that I made. That's Los Hollister and Suiza. I found in this used bookstore in Costa Rica. I found like 20 of the Hollister books in Spanish, which are just great. I love the books, and that kind of stuff is perfect language learning material, especially for children. So that was me sitting next to my friend, and she reads the Spanish, and I translate it to English, and I do the English, and we go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Well, we got through chapter 8 of that book, but that was a lot of work, and I got through 8 chapters. I wanted to finish the book. We never did finish the book together for a variety of reasons, but it was just way too hard. And I thought, I need like 20 of these. How on earth am I going to get this done? So I dropped the whole project, and I wanted really badly to make it work. I could not make it work. So that was 2023 now. The day we recorded that was April 2023. First 4 chapters, and then next 4 chapters on May 3, 2023. So we were working our way at it, but I was like, there's no way I can finish this. And so I was talking about this stuff on the podcast, sharing with you, and I think, how can I do this? And I didn't own the rights to it. And so that's the other thing. I was like, what do I own? How do I do this legally? What do I do? And I'm using old books. I thought, okay, I can maybe, anyway, you get the point. So there was no way to do it. So I just let it fall for a while. So then fast forward to earlier this year. I described in an earlier podcast that I had 5 or 7? Anyway, I had a bunch of things that I want, jobs and businesses that I would lay out. And one of them, I was like, I really think I've cracked the code on teaching languages to kids, but I can't do it the old ways. Meanwhile, I'm watching AI get better and better, and I'm saying, I figured out how to teach multiple languages just using translation software. I figured out how to make German interlinear books and have my children learn German with something that language I don't speak. I figured out how to use all these tools and to do this. And I've told everyone in my life about how to do it. I still, I give people all these long lectures of, hey, listen, you can do this. And I give them my whole setup. And to date, nobody does it. And I think, why does nobody do this? This is the greatest, fastest, most efficient thing. By the way, I just did this again in Brazil. So I went to Brazil a few months ago, and I set myself a target, and I said, I'm going to learn this language, and now I know how to learn the language in a way that works for me, and a way that's actually fun. So for me, I don't care that much about, I'm not a language nerd. I don't want to sit and do exercises. Really, all I like to do is read interesting things. But if I can read an interesting book and I can just do it in another language, then I can learn the language for free, and I enjoyed the book. And so I had my whole system. So I popped out Link, and I found some books that would work for me, and I started listening, and I was in Brazil for 3 months, and I read 1 million words in Brazilian Portuguese. Of course, remember, it was easier. I speak these other Romance languages, so of course it's a lot easier. You get 5 for the price of 1.5, basically, once you know one Romance language. And so, but in 3 months, I had no trouble in Brazilian Portuguese. I would guess, I never took any Brazilian Portuguese test, but I would guess that I did all my stuff. I did all my government stuff myself with no translators. We went to church in Portuguese. I understood everything. I struggled to express myself, especially at the beginning. I would say I probably have a C1, reading comprehension, probably a C1 verbal comprehension, probably a B2, B1, B2, B1.5. We'll call it that. Verbal expression, and I don't have any idea about. I've never written anything in Portuguese. So the point was, this system works and it's fun and it's easy, but no one can do it. And I can't figure out how to create it for people until AI, right? So while we were in Brazil, I hired a friend of mine who was doing some AI voice generation. And he had talked to me about cloning my voice. And I said, listen, here's my idea. I said, I want you to figure out, could we do what I want? I described the whole thing. Could we do this with purely AI, translation, and vocal production? Because the AI voices are really good. While I was in Brazil learning Portuguese, one of the things that I did was I made all of my language materials with AI. So I would think about a topic that I was interested in. So I read some books, but a lot of what I read was just stuff that I made for myself to read. So I thought of some topic that I was interested in. So one topic I'm really interested in is neuroplasticity in children. So I would go to AI, and I used mostly ChatGPT. I used ChatGPT, And I said, I'm interested in learning everything about neuroplasticity in children to solve these things. Write a prompt for me to teach me about neuroplasticity. And it writes the prompt. Then I say, translate that into Portuguese. It translates that into Portuguese. Then I copy and paste the prompt into a new chat. And then I input the prompt in Portuguese, and I make it do a deep research paper. So now it'll give me a deep research paper of 20 to 40 pages. And, 20 minutes later, I've got my deep research, 20 to 40 pages about neuroplasticity in children, written in Portuguese. Then I just pop that over to Link, and I read it in Link. And then ChatGPT it'll do voices, but at the time it was really struggling. So then right at that time, Link upgraded their system, and I upgraded to their AI voice. That made it super pleasurable. Boom, I just listened to the whole thing, and I have audio and text of something that I want to listen to. And this just transforms language learning, because I don't have to read any of that junk I'm not interested in. I don't have to read those stupid dialogues. To this day, I don't know how to say where's the bathroom in any of these languages. I don't care about saying where's the bathroom. I care about the actual things I'm interested in, and I can just make it all for myself. And so now I just make it all for stuff I'm interested in, just make it all. And then I use these AI tools to make it to listen to it, learn the accent, and it all works. It's great. And so, again, I've described this to people, but nobody can do it, and nobody else does it. And so I think this is a great system. Why can't I get people to do it? Well, because it's hard, because there's all these stuff you got to do. And so I had this dream, to do this with Spanish. I couldn't do it. So I had a friend of mine do it. It was okay. The results were kind of mediocre, but it was proof of concept. So then I called another friend. It was a high-level programmer. And I said, listen, his name is Matt. I said, Matt, we can do this. Could you please see if this is possible? And Matt said, well, okay. And then we talked a week later and he hadn't done anything. I was like, listen, Matt, we could build an app that would do this. We could do this all with AI voices. We could do the whole thing, and this would be great. And I sent him a whole bunch of stuff about the language marketplace. I said, listen, this is a big language marketplace. If we could make this a business, it could make it really, really profitable. And so he didn't say anything. So a week and a half later, I'm sitting at the breakfast table in Brazil, and I get this message from him. He's like, here, I built this. And he sends me a prototype that works. A prototype that works. And it was and I got to see my ideas in black and white. And it was so exciting. It was so exciting. I was like, this works. This is amazing. It was 3 little pigs or something. It's and he had it in Spanish, French, and Italian, or anyway. It was it works. It can do it. And he had kind of built this thing up for me. And so I said, this is great. We can do it. So now for the last months, I've been working on this, and we've made a lot of progress of basically creating a system that will solve all these problems for you. And what's so special is that we can expand into all kinds of content. We've got really good AI voices, and we can do all kinds of languages. So now the reason I built this thing is I built it for me and for my children so that Chinese doesn't kill us, because now I can just click play and my children can listen in Chinese. And the key thing about it, the key insight that I have that undergirds this entire project is that in order to learn a language, you need to have a lot of time with the language. If you've heard me do Q&As and whatnot, you know that I stress this, right? You need 700 hours with Spanish in order for you to do it. Well, guess what most people do? They say, I'm going to learn Spanish. So what do? We go and download Duolingo. And the only benefit Duolingo has is that it's free. That's it. But you need 700 hours of Duolingo. So they say, I'm going to go do Duolingo. So what do? Well, they start doing 15 minutes a day. Well, you need 42,000 minutes in order to learn Spanish. You do 15 minutes a day. You are 2,800 days away from your goal. Divide that by 365. You are 7.6 years away from your 700-hour number if you're doing 15 minutes a day. Now, here's what's amazing. If you can just do an hour a day, then you're 700 days away from fluency in Spanish. If you can do 2 hours a day, then you're 350 days away from fluency in Spanish. If you can do 8 hours a day, then you are, my math is failing me, 87 days away from fluency in Spanish. So you're 3 months away from fluency in Spanish if you can do 8 hours a day. So what's the problem? Well, who wants to sit and study textbooks for 8 hours a day? It's boring. And children especially don't want to do it. So all we got to do is make it interesting. And how do you make it interesting? Well, children don't have any interest in language learning. They don't care. Why should they? But they do like stories. So if you can suck a child in with stories, then you can suck a child into lots of time. And Stephen Krashen tells this story of like somebody that he knew. And this guy's totally fluent in Chinese. He goes to China, but he doesn't care about Chinese. He doesn't care about the language. But he goes to China and he speaks Chinese, and he goes home and he doesn't ever speak Chinese. But the secret was that he had a Chinese housekeeper when he was a child, and Chinese housekeeper would put on Chinese cartoons for him to watch as a boy. He didn't care about the Chinese, but he cared about the cartoons, and lo and behold, a few years later, he learned Chinese. I think it really is that simple. So cartoons have their place, and I have experimented a bunch with those things, but I am still convinced that the most important thing for children is bilingual translation, because the story is what keeps them interested, because they want to see what happens to the story, and the bilingual translation means that you learn the words much faster. And in language learning, there is a pathway, and everything begins with learning to understand what the words mean. If you can understand that cookie signifies that sweet, yummy thing that you like to put into your mouth, then when you hear the word cookie, you're going to have an image for it. And so as adults, we have lots of ways that we can do this. We as adults can exercise discipline. We can have somebody look at us and say, would you like a cookie? And hold out this warm, beautiful cookie, and we can have these sensations. As adults, we can use flashcards. We can make word cards. We can make Anki decks. And all these things are super great and super efficient if you're motivated to learn the language. I'm not. I know flashcards are really great, but I don't enjoy them, so I don't do them anymore. I don't care. All I want to do is read books I'm interested in, and everything else I don't care about. And I watch some movies and shows when I can, because I'm interested in those too. But I actually like reading better, because in reading I can stop whenever I want to look a word up, and so I'd rather just use reading to learn the words. And so this is it. This is the insight. And basically I'm trying to build a giant business on this one simple idea of let your child listen to stories and with translation. And if you'll do that for, I don't know the exact number, I think it's somewhere between 100 and 200 hours. As I've checked my memories and what records I have, I think that for most of the languages, when I read somewhere between 10 to 15 to 20 books, and I'm talking like kids' books, like 250-page books, which probably is 7 to 10 hours cumulative, somewhere in that range, then usually what happens with my children is they don't want to hear the translation anymore. It bores them. And they're like, please, can we just stop? Can we just read in the language? That doesn't mean, by the way, that they understand all the words. So remember, one of the real important reasons to teach languages to children when they're young is that children are accustomed to tolerating ambiguity. If you and I as adults, if I give you a sentence in another language, and if there's one word that you don't understand, that word is going to drive you nuts, because you don't know how to tolerate ambiguity. I don't either. I want to know, what does that word mean? Children don't care. All right, fine. They're used to hearing 10 words and they understand 6 of them, and that's good enough. Well, the same thing winds up being a superpower. That's why, like, my system that I use with Link has never worked for any of my children. I have tried. I'm like, here, read this book. They don't bother to look up any of the words. They don't care. I care about that. So we have to design a different system for children. So I think the number is basically 100 or 200 hours. I don't know for certain, but I think that if you'll give my app a shot with your children, and you'll have them listen to stories for about 100 to probably 200 hours. I think by then they won't really want to listen to the translation anymore. And then all you do is just pop them on to the target language content. So what I do is I have bilingual translation of stories for, again, maybe 100 to 200 hours. Then we find a book that they already know and like in English. It might be Chronicles of Narnia, it might be Harry Potter. Harry Potter is like the Rosetta Stone of language learning these days. It might be Harry Potter. It might be Anne of Green Gables, now that it's public domain, is in all the languages. And then you just go and read that book. And because you know the story, you can just focus on the language. And once you get a few books in, you're done. And this works. I did it with my children in Portuguese. I wasn't the only one learning Portuguese. All I did was I said for 90 days, all we're going to do is Portuguese. So we watched Portuguese movies 4 nights a week. I bought 2 suitcases full of books at the bookstore of Portuguese books. I bought all the familiar books I bought all the picture books I could find, all the books, and then just let them out. And we're going to do it in Portuguese. And it works really, really well. So wish I had a tighter outline for this podcast. I just wanted to share these ideas with you. And so that's what I built. So I'd love for you to try it. This is a beta app, by the way. It's a beta web app at the moment. So the iPhone and the Android version will be coming soon, but I need to launch that effectively. So what I'm doing today, right now, is I'm recruiting a beta group of users. And so what beta means, we've all forgotten what beta means. Beta normally means like it barely works. But now when we use the term beta, people are like, hey, this is super polished. So our app is fairly polished. Like it does work. And I've loaded it with some content, not as much as it ultimately will have, but I've loaded it up with stories, and you can pick the language. I'm launching with 5 languages. We have Spanish, French, German, Spanish, French, German, Portuguese, and Latin. I have pulled in Latin. That's kind of an interesting challenge in and of itself, because the accent is neither ecclesiastical nor classical, but I think it's usable. And we have a bunch of like modern stories translated into Latin, which is what I've always wanted for Latin for my children. I'm not offering the app and the beta thing in Chinese or Arabic yet, which are 2 languages that I want my children to learn. I turned on the Chinese module and I passed it with a few weeks ago, but the teacher that I hired to check it out didn't like it, and so I had to rework it all. So I've actually reworked the whole story system since then. You don't even know about this stuff. So I've reworked all the stories, and I think I've solved the problems with Chinese. So I think it's going to work in Chinese. I just don't have it turned on yet. So I'm launching with those 5 languages. In the fullness of time, I don't think there's really much of a limit to the languages that I can do, except for the good quality AI voices that I can get. It's easy to get amazing AI voices for English and Spanish. I don't know much about the AI voices that are available in Zulu, but that's right. It's AI. So in about 60 days, it'll be a totally different world, because that's the pace that we are going at. So if you would like to help me join the beta, here is what I need. I need people to join the beta who are interested in testing it. And so by testing it, what I want to know is, number one, first of all, can you find any bugs? We fixed a lot of the bugs, but it's a functional thing. But I really want you to test it with children, because what I don't know yet is there just something weird about Joshua's children that somehow like they get these results, or is this truly something useful that other people can also do? I've had some people make on this, and I've post on it in homeschool forums and things like that. I've had other people take action on it, but I'd really like to get a few hundred people getting in 100 hours in the app. So if I can get a few hundred of my listeners to, get to the point where 3 or 4 months from now, your children have 100 hours in the app, that would be amazing. And then I'll be able to have your testimonials, and I'll actually know, yep, this does work. I think it works. Pretty sure it works. But so far I have a sample set of basically my family, because no one else has been able to do what I've done. And I couldn't really give it to anybody else because it was all copyrighted stuff, which, by the way, what I'm doing right now is I'm doing all public domain books. One of the amazing things about English literature is that we have just an absolute bounty of amazing books that are written for children. It's the golden age of children's literature, that are engaging and that are all public domain. And so I'm using all the classic literature books. What I have done is I have chosen to update them mostly. And that was when I told you on the previous podcast that, hey, next week I'll tell you about it. I had everything ready to go. But what I decided was, after the Chinese fiasco, I decided that releasing the public domain books in their original format was probably not the right solution for most people, because in general, the key thing, meaning that, like, for example, the Howard Pyle Robin Hood book. I love Robin Hood by Howard Pyle. My children love the Howard Pyle Robin Hood book. And so I put in the Howard Pyle Robin Hood book. But the English is a bear. And if you're used to that stuff because you read classic literature, as I want you to and I want your children to do, it's so easy. But if you're used to cotton candy and you eat steak, it's very different. And so what I just finally came to the conclusion of is, like, this isn't going to work. I've just cut basically everybody out of it. So what I did was I took all the books, like Howard Pyle, Robin Hood, and then I just simplified everything. So I modernized and simplified the language, and then I translated that. So one of the things that's really fascinating about not ancient, but a bit of the archaic English, the 100-year-old books, is that they had a very different way of writing. They didn't write with short, simple sentences the way that we do now. They wrote with sentences that had thought after thought after thought after thought. And so when you start translating the things, it's challenging to translate because you have these much longer sentences, and that's all gone in modern English stories. But what I had to do in order to make it accessible is I had to go ahead and get rid of that. So I may offer the original version and the simplified version. That's what I'm testing in the app right now. Is I turned off most of the original versions, but I kept three of the original versions live, so that anybody who wants to try the original version can do it. I could sell that as a benefit, meaning that I think your children should be able. There's no reason why, if my 8-year-old can love Howard Pyle's Robin Hood, then I think your 8-year-old can love Howard Pyle's Robin Hood. But that doesn't mean that the average 8-year-old is going to be able to do it, because you have to have years of reading and being read too in order to develop the skills to handle that kind of stake. Anyway, that's what the delay of the last few weeks has been, is I had to rework that. So there's going to be bugs, but I'm offering it at a super cheap price. If you want to join the beta, should I say the price? I'm not going to say the price because I want you to go and do it. And I want you to echolingoapp.com/RPF is where you can go. echolingoapp.com/RPF. Link in the show notes. Echo, ECHO, Lingo, LINGO, app, app.com/RPF is where you can join the beta. If you will join the beta, you get access to the app. It's fully functional. It's got 12 to 15 stories that I have in there right now. You have access in those 5 languages: Spanish, French, German, Portuguese, and Latin. I chose all the voices myself. I like all the voices. I think they all are good, including the Latin. I think it's okay. I don't have a classical pronunciation Latin model yet, nor an ecclesiastical. So it's kind of a hybrid pronunciation, but it's totally doable, totally understandable. And I think it's great. I hope it'll be good for you. And so that's what I really want to do. I'm hoping that this technology will work for other people. That's what you can help me with. If it will work for other people, then I got to figure out how to get the message out to the masses. And my dream is that if we could get a few million children using this app, then we can make language learning super simple. And my whole idea behind this, I use this analogy when I talk about it, is that anybody can climb to the top of Mount Everest. Anybody can do it. If somebody would build a set of stairs, and if those set of stairs would not be, too big, about 4 to 6 inches for each rise would be great. And if you had all the time in the world, if you didn't have to go in one day, because it's a little hard to climb up that many stairs in one day. But if you could give people a few weeks, I think anybody in the world could get up to the top of Mount Everest and get back down. And that's the point. And so almost anything in life is easy if those of us who know the thing can just make it easier for people. And so everything can be learned in a set of skill progression. And there's anybody can learn calculus if you just step by step work your way up to it. Anybody can learn to kick a soccer ball. Anybody can learn Japanese. Like, it's just a matter of doing it. And the two quantities are, number one, the two key factors are, number one, can we make the steps small enough? And so Like, that's what doesn't work with Chinese. The steps at the beginning of Chinese are so big that you're sitting there trying to pull yourself up these steps, and you got to be really determined to do that. But if we could just chop those big steps down and make them 4 to 6 inches, we can do it. And the second thing is we need enough time. So I'm not saying that everybody can learn Japanese in a year or in 3 months. Of course not. But in 10 years, of course you can do that. So where do you get the time from? Well, what we do wrong is we stuff a bunch of children into a high school language classroom, and you say, all right, you're going to learn to take Spanish 1. And what are you actually going to get? You're going to get maybe 150 contact hours with Spanish in the course of a Spanish 1 language course. And you need 700 hours. So then you come back in Spanish 2, and you maybe get another 150 class hours with Spanish. So you're at 300 hours. And you wonder why you took 2 years of high school Spanish and you don't speak Spanish. It's obvious. It's obvious because you had 300 hours of Spanish and you need 700 hours of Spanish. So if you had gone on and you'd take Spanish 1, 2, 3, and 4, then all of a sudden now we're at about 600 hours. Add one more little bit of practice around them, boom, you're fluent in Spanish. Or if you can put in the extra work. But hey, what about this? What if you take your third grader and you have your third grader do 100 hours a year of Spanish stories, and then another 100 hours in fourth grade, and then another 100 hours in fifth grade, and by the time you come into Spanish 1 in ninth grade, you're already 500 to 600 hours deep. And now Spanish is easy. And if you think back to your high school Spanish classroom when you were sitting there, you had that stupid Guatemalan kid sitting next to you, spoke Spanish at home, and he never had to study because he spoke Spanish at home. And it was so angry with you because you were angry with him because you had to work so hard, and that fool had the advantage of speaking Spanish at home. Darn Guatemalans, right? And isn't it obvious, right? If you experience something, it's easy. So we can do this. We're in the day and age. We are going into a golden age of learning where anything that you are interested in, you can learn it now more easily and more quickly. It's so exciting. There's this whole field of knowledge that my entire lifetime I've always felt like an idiot about. And usually it involves things like the lawnmower not starting or the car not working. And now what do? Well, give me an AI bot and I say, my car won't start. What do I do? And it says, do this, check for electricity, for spark, check for electricity, blah, blah, blah. You can take your lawnmower and you say, how do I fix a lawnmower? Here's your diagnostic manual. And then you just act like a dum-dum and follow the steps and do what you're told. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, magically, a few hours later, you fixed it. And this makes me feel like a genius now. My whole life, there's this whole area of human knowledge and accomplishment that has been frozen off to me. And now I can do it because I have the patient teacher helping me do this. So just imagine where we can be a decade from now. Imagine where we can be 5 decades from now with these tools. Imagine the things that your children will be capable of and my children will be capable of if we help them to be competent in these fields, because instead of having these giant steps that they can't even get a knee up on, we can just take all these fields and we can chop those big steps down into 4 to 6 inch steps. And we can just say, every day come, climb up a couple of steps, 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, work on this. And we've solved the what's it called? The 2 sigma problem from Bloom. Like, we've solved the problem. We can use these tools to get the individualized help and the individualized education. And when I don't, for me as a language learner, when I don't have to read your stupid dialogues about like, hi, can I have some eggs? And I can read about neuroplasticity because that's what I'm interested in. That's good. And then for someone else, they're going to go and read about Pokemon. And you can do all this now. And that's what we're living in, the most exciting time in human history. And this is, we're developing. I hope that my small contribution will make a big difference, but there's so much good stuff. Like, this is what the guys at Math Academy are doing. I signed up for the physics graph. Oh, they changed the name of the company. I can't remember. I signed up for all the physics graph courses. This is where we're going with this educational technology. In my RPF Academy, I'm probably doing a mediocre job of it, but I'm trying hard to say, like, you don't need financial planners anymore, or at the very least, you don't need that upfront stuff. You can come into your financial planner with several good options and you can talk about the fine points of it because you've done the work yourself and you've learned all about it. I know I sound goofy, right? But friends, like, we are in the most exciting time of human history. It is incredible what can be done. And we're going to move the frontier of human knowledge. We're going to move it forward so far and so fast in the next couple of decades that our grandchildren, we're going to tell them stories and about the world we're living in today, and they're not going to understand or conceive of it at all. And it's the most exciting time of human history. So I want to contribute to that with my app. I am really excited about it. If you'll help me do the beta test and give me real feedback. So the problem is I need your feedback. So like I'm super biased. I know what I do. I know what I like. I know what I work. I'm going to use this app with my children for the rest of my life. Because what happened, by the way, is that as I have gone on, we've done now these, 8 languages, and my eldest is, I would say, fluent in 5 and then learning 3 more. What happened is that my youngest ones are not coming along as fast because now my time is split. Now I sit down at the breakfast table, and instead of reading Spanish every day, then I'm going to read German today, and I'll read Portuguese the other day, and then, how's the Latin going to get done? And so my younger children are not learning as fast as my older children did because now my time is split among 6 children, and what do we do? And then we always have this thing, okay, we're going to watch a movie. Well, we watch a lot more movies now, but we have so many languages to watch movies in now that you can't keep it up. And so that's actually the limit where languages is. The human brain has no limit as to what number of languages it can learn, but there's a time limit as to how many languages you can maintain. I think that number for the average student is 6, maybe 5, 7, whatever. I'm making up this number. But what I mean is that I don't see how most people can maintain more than 6 because you just can't get enough use of them even after you learn them and you run out of time. But what if we could go from an average of, say, 1.4 languages to 3? Wouldn't that be amazing? And especially I want to do this in America. America is one of the most multilingual countries in the world. It's astonishing. I was totally blind to this in the past. I swallowed that. So there's this joke that I've come to hate, but it's the most commonly told joke. I'll tell you. Okay. What do you call someone who speaks 3 languages? Trilingual. What do you call someone who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual. What do you call someone who speaks 1 language? American. That's what they say. It's stupid, but Americans and Brits have the same basic reputation. We don't learn languages. And part of this is geographic, right? If you're living in Luxembourg, you have 4 languages you have to learn just to exist in your country, and you're surrounded by 8 more. So of course you're going to speak 3 or 4 languages because your country is the size of the county I grew up in. So there's a vast difference of experience between growing up in Luxembourg and growing up in Florida. On the other hand, all this criticism that Americans get with regard to multilingualism is all fake. It's all dumb. It's all wrong. I read this book last year. I don't remember the name of it, but it was talking about like the multilingual century or America, the multilingual. I don't know. But it went through all this data, and I was astonished at, like, America is one of the most multilingual places in the world, including, by the way, do you know where America ranks on the list? Do you know what the most populous Spanish-speaking countries are? So a few years ago, it was predicted that by the year 2050, the United States of America would be the second most populous Spanish-speaking country. That's already happened. It's already happened. And in fact, by the later this year, so right now, Mexico has the highest number of Spanish speakers in the world, of I think like 120-something million, 125 million. The United States has like 60 million Spanish speakers, which is more than Colombia has 50 million. Argentina has less. Spain is like in 5th place. And so there are more Spanish speakers in the United States than anywhere in the world. And for years, I've wanted to do radical personal finance in Espanol, and I've failed. I tried a few years ago, but I totally failed at it. But this is a huge deal. So, but later, again, I don't remember when, but in the future, the United States is going to be the most populous Spanish-speaking country in the world. It's also going to be a highly popular English-speaking country, and also dozens of other languages. So we're a crazy multilingual country. Now imagine we could raise that level of multilingualism, and then we could send those Americans out into the world. We can be an amazing force to be reckoned with. And what's going to be the key is that now speaking English and Spanish, cool, that's nice, that's great. But imagine if you speak English and Spanish and Zulu. And you can go and you can negotiate trade between Zulu speakers and Argentinians. Like, we are so well positioned to be leaders in the world, and this is one key part of it. Not to say nothing of all the other benefits of multilingualism. You live longer, you're smarter, your brain works better, blah, blah, blah. I'll come in. Anyway, I'm done. I'd love it if you join me in the beta and help me figure out, does this app work for others, and how can I make it good? We put in features that we pulled out, so we're kind of working with it. It's not ready for an app on your phone yet. It's just a web app. It is a web app, but it's a good web app. And then the app is basically ready. It may be, we haven't decided our launch date. Depends on how well y'all respond and what works. So please go to echolingoapp.com/RPF, echolingoapp.com/RPF. I'm screening it. I'm not giving it to you for free for the beta. I'm charging you a tiny little bit of money, but that's because I need people who are serious. That doesn't help me to have free people sign up. I just need people who are actually going to use it. And then if you can put in a couple of weeks of use with your children and just see, like, will they listen to it? Help me figure out how to teach other people about it, because you and me here in this context, where I'm an hour and 5 minutes deep with you on this, you're pretty hardcore and I'm pretty hardcore and we work well together, but I got to figure out how to make this stuff simpler for other people. And I think I can do it. I think I've done it, but that's the problem that I've faced. Even though I've worked out these systems and they work great for me, I don't think I've ever actually gotten anyone else to do what I do. And I can't figure it out why, except that it's just too complex. And so if I can make it simpler, I can make those steps smaller, which is my goal, then we can make progress. Thank you for listening. Please go. And if you're interested, sign up for the beta and get your children on it. By the way, I mostly have intended it for children, because along the way, as I've developed this thing, I'm like, just do it for children. Like, because that's what I need. I can do all the stuff myself for adults with other stuff that's out there already. And I don't need this for me. But actually, as I've done it, I wrote my co-founder a message last week because I was listening to the Latin stuff. And I was like, man, this is actually really fun. I like listening to these stories in Latin. And this is actually really cool. This does solve some problems for me. So I think it is good for adults too. But I did orient the literature selections that I chose, I oriented them towards children's stories. But I may change that in the future. So I'd welcome adult users as well. echolingoapp.com/RPF, echolingoapp.com/RPF. Please sign up for my beta today. See if it works for you. And I crave your feedback. Thank you.